Elias Varn grumbled as he adjusted the strap of his energy lance, muttering to himself about how ceremonial duties were a poor substitute for actual excitement. The floating city of Solera Prime glimmered beneath him, a lattice of neon lights suspended above a gas giant that bubbled with iridescent storms. He had spent most of his career dodging paperwork and semi-hostile aliens, and now he was tasked with escorting Queen Liara of Arathis, a responsibility that sounded impressive in theory and tedious in practice. He squinted at the parade route, where officials strutted in designer armor, their helmets reflecting the blinding light of hovering cameras. His boots clicked against the transparent floor, and he imagined the conversation he would have with his superior later. "Yes, sir, I did protect the queen. Also, she didn't fire me, which is technically a success." Liara appeared ahead of him, gliding down the aisle with a poise that seemed designed to make every guard, diplomat, and assassin question their life choices. Her long ears twitched slightly, an almost imperceptible movement, yet it gave her an otherworldly alertness. Elias had seen elegant rulers before, but there was something amusingly human about how she scowled at the overly enthusiastic officials waving holographic banners. He whispered under his breath, "And here I thought politicians were awkward on Earth," and earned a subtle flick of one ear, which he decided counted as acknowledgement, though whether it was amusement or irritation he could not tell. The parade was progressing smoothly, too smoothly if Elias' instincts were correct, which they almost never were unless caffeine was involved. A sudden blur in the crowd caught his eye, plasma blades flashing like lightning through a storm of holograms. He barely had time to think before his lance arced in front of him, deflecting the first strike with a crackling shower of sparks that could have roasted marshmallows. "Guess they didn't read the memo." "Do not attack the queen," he muttered, ducking just as another assassin spun toward him with a blade that hummed like a starving synth dragon. Liara's hand shot out instinctively, grasping for support, and Elias caught her by the elbow. "I have a bad habit of showing up at the wrong time," he said, trying for humor as he vaulted over a collapsing security drone. Her long ears flicked, possibly in annoyance or perhaps disbelief that a human would make jokes mid-attack. "Is this your idea of courtly charm?" she asked, though her voice was steady, almost musical. Elias grinned. "Depends, are you into dangerous charm or paperwork charm? I skipped paperwork charm for combat today." The next 10 minutes were a blur of flipping, dodging, and sarcastic commentary. Elias made quips about how assassins seemed to dislike proper introductions, and one particularly arrogant attacker froze mid-spin when he shouted, "No, really, I insist you wait your turn." It was audacious, ridiculous, and somehow effective. Liara, meanwhile, was not just surviving, she was analyzing, countering minor attacks with precise movements and an unexpected elegance, though her long ears twitched nervously when plasma arcs skated too close. At one point, a laser bolt missed her by inches, and Elias caught it midair, jabbing it against the nearest hover stand with a loud sizzle. "Safety first," he said with a wink that would have been more appreciated if anyone else wasn't currently trying to kill them. Eventually, the bulk of the assassins faltered, either from confusion or sheer disbelief at Elias' combination of improvisation and foolish bravery. He helped Liara to her feet after she had vaulted over a collapsing energy barrier, brushing off smudges of luminous dust from her ceremonial robe. "You fight well," she admitted, the faintest smirk tugging at her lips, which gave her long ears a slight upward twitch. "I have my moments," he replied. "Mostly during emergencies, preferably ones involving lasers and potential lawsuits from interstellar insurance companies." She laughed, a soft, melodic sound that Elias decided might be more addictive than caffeine. The aftermath was a chaotic blend of flashing emergency drones and hovering medkits, but Elias found himself distracted. He noticed the way her eyes, amber and sharp, scanned the battlefield, not for him but for the safety of her people. There was intelligence there, yes, but also a kind of amused disbelief, as if the queen of an entire planet could not believe she was being rescued by a human with a sarcastic streak. "You're strange," she said finally, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I don't usually see humans act like this." "I'll take that as a compliment," he said. "I'm either heroic or insane. The line is thin, mostly depending on how well I stick the landing after jumping off things." She tilted her head, the motion accentuating her long ears, and Elias thought that if he ever had to draw a star map of her face, he'd put the ears first, the rest would follow naturally. By the time they reached the safe zone, Elias was exhausted, his armor scorched and his pride slightly bruised by minor burns, but there was a lightness he hadn't felt in years. Liara was calm now, walking beside him rather than behind, her long ears twitching in subtle amusement at his endless commentary on danger and strategy. "I suppose," she said, "that you're my guardian then." Elias nearly tripped over a hovering supply drone in shock. "Wait, that's official? I thought it was just temporary chaos protection with optional sarcasm." "It's official," she confirmed, flicking a hand in a gesture that seemed casual but carried weight. "You saved my life, human. That is not forgotten easily." Elias swallowed hard, trying not to make a joke about interstellar romance laws or alien royalty requiring emotional hazard pay. Instead, he said, "Well, I've always wanted a queen to owe me one." She laughed again, a warm sound that made him forget to be concerned about assassins or politics for just a moment. As they reached the chambers designated for royal recovery, Elias found himself glancing at her in a new way. Her long ears twitched again, this time when she looked at him, and he realized that in saving her life, he had unwittingly entered a world far more complicated than any mission briefing had ever prepared him for. But as she muttered, "Do you ever stop talking?" With a smile, Elias made a quiet vow to himself. Survival was important, heroism optional, and perhaps, just perhaps, humor could be the bridge between human chaos and alien grace. The night settled over Solera Prime, neon reflecting off the glass floors and shimmering like distant stars, and somewhere in the city, a human guardian laughed to himself, wondering if anyone else would ever understand that he had saved a queen and might have accidentally stolen her heart in the process. Elias found himself in the shifting corridors of Liara's palace, a labyrinth that seemed to have a mind of its own. Every wall subtly altered its hue and texture depending on who passed through, and sometimes the floor tilted just enough to make a human stumble dramatically. Elias stumbled twice. "I'm pretty sure this hallway is mocking me," he muttered. Liara's long ears twitched as she glanced back, a faint smirk on her lips. "It doesn't mock you," she said. "It simply evaluates your worth." So far, mildly amusing, minimally competent. Elias bowed theatrically, earning a small chuckle from her. "Then I shall endeavor to be spectacularly competent in the next hallway, preferably without breaking anything." The palace was alive with subtle energy. Holographic attendants flitted past, offering refreshments that hummed with anti-gravity properties, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and sweet nectar, an odd combination that Elias mentally filed under alien sophistication. As they navigated toward her council chambers, Liara briefed him on the delicate balance of Aratha's politics. "Every noble house has its quirks," she said, her long ears flicking in emphasis. "Some are harmless, some are absurdly dangerous, and a few believe that teleporting into a council meeting uninvited is a valid form of diplomacy." Elias laughed, picturing a group of dignitaries suddenly vanishing mid-discussion. "So, basically my kind of party," he said. Their arrival in the council chamber was met with polite bows and cautious glances. The council was a collection of Aratha's nobles, each more intimidating in ceremonial attire than the last. One elder with a shimmering cloak that shifted like liquid starlight fixed Elias with a piercing gaze. "The human," he intoned. "Here to protect the queen?" Elias gave a small salute. "At your service. And by service, I mostly mean I'll try not to die on your watch." The nobles stiffened and Liara raised a hand. "He is competent," she said, though her voice carried a note of amusement that Elias picked up on immediately. Discussion began, and it quickly became apparent that Elias was hopelessly unprepared for Aratha's bureaucracy. The nobles debated the allocation of plasma harvests, interstellar trade routes, and the ethical implications of genetically engineered pets. Elias nodded along, attempting to keep pace, and occasionally muttered, "So, soup spoons with shields, right?" Liara suppressed a laugh behind her hand. "He's trying," she whispered to a nearby aide. "Barely." Hours passed, and Elias learned that survival was not just about fighting assassins, but also about navigating social landmines. He accidentally insulted a noble house by commenting on their decorative headpiece. "It's majestic," he said, and immediately noticed the elder's ears, tiny ones, not as dramatic as Liara's, curl slightly in what he hoped was amusement and not offense. "You humans are strange," Liara murmured, long ears twitching as she watched him fumble through etiquette. "You insult and flatter in the same breath." During a brief recess, they walked through the palace's floating gardens. Bioluminescent flowers hovered midair, emitting soft pulses of light and subtle hums that harmonized with the palace's energy. Elias attempted to compliment one of the flowers but mispronounced its name and ended up calling it a glowing donut, which made Liara laugh aloud. Her laughter echoed through the garden, long ears swaying in amusement. "You have a remarkable talent for offending and amusing simultaneously," she said. Elias shrugged. "It's a gift, also a defense mechanism." Just as Elias began to relax, a small alert flashed on his communicator, a subtle warning that trouble was brewing. One of the rival houses had dispatched covert agents, taking advantage of the queen's engagement in ceremonial duties. "I think they're about to crash our little garden party," Elias muttered, adjusting his lance. Liara raised an eyebrow. "Do you always speak in metaphors when danger arrives?" "Only when sarcasm keeps me sane," he replied. The ensuing encounter was chaotic, but filled with the kind of humor that only someone like Elias could bring to a life-threatening situation. Agents appeared from concealed panels, only to be surprised by Elias juggling anti-gravity potted plants while fending off attacks. "Would you like a smoothie with that?" he quipped, deflecting a blade with a carefully aimed energy pulse. Liara, initially startled, couldn't help but smile at his antics. When an agent lunged at her, Elias caught her mid-tumble, spinning her safely aside. "I may be chaotic, but I know my audience," he said, grinning. Her ears twitched in approval or possibly in disbelief. After the skirmish, they found themselves alone in a quiet chamber. Liara's long ears tilted toward him, and for the first time, Elias noticed a softness in her amber eyes that went beyond gratitude. "You are unconventional," she said, sitting on a floating cushion that hovered gently above the floor. "I suppose humans are rarely so fearless or so foolish." Elias shrugged, settling opposite her. "Sometimes it takes foolishness to make life interesting. Also, apparently, to survive assassination attempts." Liara laughed softly, a sound that made the chamber feel warmer than any solar panel or bioluminescent bloom. They began talking, not about politics or assassins, but about small, personal things, oddly enough, about favorite foods, what it felt like to sleep in zero gravity, and whether humans could actually play any instrument well. Elias admitted that he had tried a stringed instrument once and ended up creating what he called a new form of sonic chaos. Liara tilted her head, her long ears flicking. "I would pay to hear this," she said, though Elias suspected she might have meant it as a threat. Hours passed like minutes, and Elias realized that the bond forming between them was subtle but undeniable. They joked, they teased, they navigated cultural differences with awkward charm, and for a few moments the political tension faded into the background. Liara's people would soon expect her to return to duty, and Elias would have to be vigilant, but here, in the quiet moments, humor and trust were their armor. As the night deepened, Elias found himself standing guard outside her chambers, reflecting on the day. He had survived an assassination attempt, learned the complexities of alien diplomacy, and somehow managed to make a queen laugh. Liara's long ears twitched from within the palace, and he imagined she was smiling at some ridiculous comment he had made earlier. Perhaps it was absurd, but he felt a strange sense of purpose, realizing that humor could be as vital as courage in a universe filled with intrigue, danger, and unexpected connections. He whispered to the silent corridors, "Tomorrow, we conquer bureaucracy or at least make it laugh a little." And for the first time, Elias felt that protecting a queen might not just be a duty. It could be the start of something far more complicated, far more thrilling, and far funnier than he had ever anticipated. Elias adjusted his lance, squinting through the viewport at the asteroid field looming ahead. "You know," he said, voice echoing in the cockpit, "I didn't think interstellar diplomacy would involve dodging floating rocks the size of small moons." Liara, seated beside him, flicked her long ears in amusement. "Most humans wouldn't survive 10 seconds out there," she said, "and yet here you are still making jokes." Elias grinned. "Humor is survival, Your Majesty. Or maybe sheer stubbornness. Probably both." The starship's engines hummed in approval, though Elias suspected they didn't care either way. They had been fleeing Solara Prime for days, the political tension escalating as rival houses discovered the Queen's vulnerability after the failed assassination attempt. Agents of those houses pursued them across multiple star systems, utilizing everything from cloaked fighter drones to holographic decoys, and even, Elias noted dryly, one particularly ambitious attempt at telepathic espionage, which had left him feeling like someone had tried to read his grocery list. Liara, despite the danger, found herself laughing at his commentary. "Do you ever stop?" she asked, though the faint twitch of her ears betrayed amusement. The journey led them to Nymera, a jungle-covered moon uninhabited by intelligent life but crawling with bioluminescent predators and plants that could, apparently, bite if provoked. Elias tripped over a root that glowed with eerie blue light and muttered, "Seriously, if one more thing tries to eat me, I'm claiming self-defense." Liara caught him before he fell completely, her hands steady and surprisingly warm. "You are reckless," she said, but the corner of her mouth turned up in a smile, her long ears flicking like curious antennae. "And yet, you are alive." Survival on Nymera became a test of wit and improvisation. Predators stalked them, and the terrain itself seemed designed to trip human feet, but Elias navigated the challenges with a combination of bravado, sarcastic commentary, and uncanny luck. At one point, he diverted a predator by pretending to be a holographic projection, turning the creature's confusion into a hilarious spectacle as it charged the wrong bush repeatedly. Liara laughed so hard her ears twitched violently, almost knocking over a glowing vine. "You are absurd," she gasped. "Completely infuriatingly absurd." Elias bowed mid-run, "I aim to please." Amid the chaos, they shared moments of quiet intimacy. Around the glowing pools of Nymera, Elias discovered that humor could bridge the gap between species. He asked Liara about her culture, her people, and the purpose of the long ears that had fascinated him from the first moment. She explained that they were partly sensory, partly expressive, a subtle language of emotion. Elias teased, "So if I tickle them, do I start a war?" She laughed, swatting him gently. "Careful, human. You might just start a revolution." In these fleeting moments, their bond deepened, trust built on laughter, courage, and shared danger. Eventually, they realized the only way to survive the political storm was to return to the capital and confront the rivals directly. Elias, once a man who ran from responsibility, now embraced it with a mixture of courage and humor. "We go in loud," he said, checking his lance and dodging a particularly curious bioluminescent vine. "Or we go in with style, preferably loud with style, maybe both." Liara smirked. "I would follow you into battle anywhere, human." Back at Solara Prime, the rivals awaited, their agents in place, ready for sabotage. The battle that followed combined tactical genius with ridiculous improvisation. Elias employed decoy drones shaped like himself, causing enemies to waste energy on holograms, while Liara used her authority and telepathic awareness to outmaneuver their opponents politically and strategically. During one critical moment, an agent lunged at her from behind a floating table. Elias caught her effortlessly, rolling both of them away from a laser blast. "I told you I'd protect you," he said, grinning despite the sweat on his brow. She leaned into him for balance, her long ears brushing against his shoulder, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them. The final confrontation with the rival houses was less a fight and more a masterclass in blending wit, diplomacy, and tactical skill. Elias suggested absurd yet effective countermeasures, like repurposing ceremonial holograms into distractions, while Liara commanded the council with quiet authority that left their enemies bewildered. The rivals, unprepared for a human who laughed in the face of danger and a queen who combined charm with deadly precision, capitulated. Elias even managed a flourish, launching a hollow projection of himself doing an exaggerated victory dance, causing the opposing dignitaries to sputter with disbelief, while Liara tried not to laugh openly. With the capital secure, Elias and Liara finally had a moment of peace. In her private chambers, Elias reflected on how much he had changed. He had arrived as a guardian who relied on luck and instinct, but he was leaving as a man who understood responsibility, courage, and the delicate balance of humor in the face of chaos. Liara, seated before him, allowed her long ears to twitch in soft amusement, the faintest warmth in her eyes. You've grown, she said, her voice low and intimate, not just in skill but in understanding. Elias grinned, adjusting his lance out of habit. Well, it only took an alien queen, multiple assassination attempts, and a planet that seems intent on chewing me alive. Growth tends to be dramatic. Liara reached for his hand, her touch steady and sure. You have earned more than survival, Elias Varn, she said. You have earned trust and something closer than that. He felt a strange flutter in his chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and an unfamiliar warmth. I think I might have accidentally stolen your heart along the way, he said, half joking, half serious. Her ears flicked and she smiled, leaning closer. Perhaps, she admitted, and perhaps it was inevitable. They looked out over the neon-lit city of Solera Prime, the night calm after days of chaos. Elias realized that the universe, despite its threats and dangers, had room for connection, laughter, and love. He had saved a queen, survived impossible odds, and in the process discovered courage he didn't know he had and a humor that could ease even the deadliest tension. And as Liara's hand found his, her long ears twitching softly against his arm, he understood that some battles were fought not with weapons, but with trust, wit, and the quiet, stubborn insistence to stay human in the midst of chaos. The galaxy was vast and threats would come again, but for now, they had each other. Elias knew he had changed. He was no longer just a guardian, no longer just a human laughing at danger. He was a partner, a friend, and perhaps something more. And somewhere in the stars above, he could swear he heard the